And there he just walked in the door. Perfect. This is the Public Safety Committee meeting for Monday, September 14th. I'm Councilman's Chairman, joined by Council Members Perry and Cardenas. And with that, Mr. Clerk, we will go with, we have speakers on 1 and 2 and 6, so we will call those. And if there's no objection, we will receive and file 3, 4, 5, and 7. If there's no objections, that be the order. Let's begin with item number 1.
Item 1, City Attorney reports and ordinances relative to amending Los Angeles Municipal Code to limit the number of roosters on any property located in the City of Los Angeles.
And Linda, you come on.
Good morning, committee members. Dov LaSalle, Assistant City Attorney. When this came to your committee some time ago, there was a question raised by, I think, then Committee Chair Bernard Parks about some of the words in the ordinance. We've made the changes. We submitted a new report indicating the changes we made and why we thought they were perfectly appropriate. And unless there are any other questions, I also have the Assistant General Manager of the department, Linda Barth, is here to answer any questions as well.
Okay. Ms. Barth?
Council members, this ordinance was generated out of concerns, council members, about both cockfighting and about noise in neighborhoods. One of the questions that was asked of Animal Services was to consider whether we could do a hearing program to adjudicate complaints about noise, similar to the barking dog program. And what we've expressed through this process is that we really don't have the staff resources. We're having difficulty keeping up with the barking dog program as it is. And that what we, from our perspective, and our Board of Commissioners also considered this, our perspective was that limiting the roosters to 1 in a yard would probably resolve many of the issues where there's multiple roosters. We also follow up on distance violations. Roosters have to be 100 feet from any other residence if someone has one in their yard. So we support the this ordinance and will be prepared to enforce it.
Okay.
I have some questions. I appreciate you being prepared to enforce it. Many departments are overburdened with a lot of activity and not enough budget, not enough men and women out to enforce or to take care of all the issues and service the community of Los Angeles of 4 million people and over 1 million individual residence units. That being the case, these penalties, do any of them come back to the department technically, or would we have to budget that in a roundabout way if we wanted to have the department receive the funds because of the time and energy they put into enforcing?
We've drafted this with general language, but what our office and the department is looking at is an enforcement mechanism through the use of administrative citations that would allow this money to be kept by the city, in which case then it would of course be up to the mayor and the council to determine whether those funds would go into the city's general fund or into a trust fund directly to the department to alleviate any cost of enforcement.
Okay. I'm new to this committee, and so if would it be the city attorney's office who could probably explain better fines and things of that nature so I can start understanding that better?
It's actually the CAO, and it's been the policy of the city, except in some circumstances, that money goes to the general fund, which has always been, I thought, interesting. We ask the departments to enforce, and then we take away the money they generate from enforcement and keep in the general fund. There's examples where we don't do that, and that was like the money for licensing horses, which goes to Rec and Parks for trail maintenance.
Correct.
So we specified in the ordinance that the money's to go for specific use. So other than just supporting the staff, you could specify specific use for any other animal-related function.
Mm-hmm. And okay, so what I'd like to do, I guess, is have the CAO, the appropriate CAO individual or individuals to brief me in my office, to bring me up to speed of the custom and practices of the city of Los Angeles, to bring me up to speed as to what examples seem to have met that threshold. It sounds to me as though it is truly a policy decision of the council to decide what we want to do with certain fees. I am aware of the fact that certain departments are fee-based, and it's really interesting that Animal Services is a department that has a lot of activity that actually involves enforcing the laws and the ordinances, but at the same time, it appears that they're not allowed to keep any of the fees that would perhaps allow them to continue to enforce on a stronger level. So I'd like to try to get down to the bottom of that. So.
And Councilmember, you did mention something about priority and thin resources. Probably 75% of what our officers respond to as far as calls are leash law violations, stray animals, cruelty, and animals that are hurt. And although we will enforce the ordinance to the best our resources allow, you are correct that as a priority outside of animal cruelty, stray animals running about, endangering people, and hurt animals, enforcing the roosters and distances and that kind of thing will be a lower priority than those. And they occupy about 75% of the work of our officers, just those 3 types of calls.
Thank you.
Would you have any recommendations for Councilman Cardenas and what you could create a nexus for the use of the money if it was to be reserved for your department?
Yes, as the city attorney mentioned, we are working, our board has actually already specifically authorized us and asked us to work with the CAO and the city attorney on developing an administrative citation program. That would, in fact, allow us when we issue, rather than just a citation to court, which we could also still do, we would charge immediately, and then that money could come back into a fund as directed by council.
But the question was, what you have to create a nexus for the use of it. So for trash collection fees, we've maintained that money's going for trash recycling purposes and education, things like that. Is there a specific nexus you could draw for an animal service related function that this would support?
Absolutely. You could draw a specific nexus between officers who are enforcing certain kinds of ordinances, distance and strays and leash law and licensing requirements back into a fund to help pay the salaries of the people so that you increase the number of officers.
Mr. Cardenas?
Thank you for that, Mr. Chairman. I was thinking the same thing but didn't know how to articulate that question. What's the deadline for this process of between the CAO, your department, et cetera, for you to come up with that language or those recommendations? There will be, there are several steps to take, including taking a look at other departments like building and safety, if they want to get involved in an administrative citation type process like this. Our board has sent a communication to the mayor and the council asking that you would give specific directions to the city attorney to assist us to help us expedite that process. But realistically, it's probably a year process because we have to do some research, figure out exactly how it would work. There'll have to be an adjudication or an appeal process developed that requires some staffing, so we have to look into how that would work. If we give some sort of a citation, there has to be some mechanism for a person to come and complain that it was, improperly given and so forth. So it's probably about a year process to figure that out. Mr. Chairman, rather than wait a year to find out if all the departments are going to cooperate with this process, I'd like them to report back within 60 days of all the departments relevant within the city that need to be engaged in that process in order for it to be a complete process, so that a year from now or hopefully sooner we can in fact have a real product, instead of a year from now somebody reluctantly explaining that, well, we were doing just fine but such and such department didn't really get engaged, so we're not able to complete the process.
Sure. And there are a number of jurisdictions in California, including locally in Southern California, who do administrative citations. So there's a number of models to look at.
Very good. Ms. Perry?
A quick question. One of the concerns I have in my district is not only noise issues, but cockfighting rings in light industrial areas. So when the department comes upon a ring, do they seize the birds immediately, or do they issue a citation, or how does that work?
Well, I think in terms of cockfighting, Los Angeles Police Department is also very much involved. And if they actually go in and find a cockfighting location, all the birds will be seized.
And they don't have to be engaged in the actual act of
fighting them at that time, no.
There'll be a lot of birds there, and you wonder why you have so many birds
and there's
there.
Paraphernalia and all kinds of physical evidence as well.
Okay, so they can be taken right away.
That is correct in that kind of a situation, yes. I think if our officers or PD stumbled upon a house that had 2 roosters after this ordinance were passed, they would probably receive a citation or a penalty and told to get rid of a rooster. But in that case, yes, they'd seize the roosters.
Okay, So this ordinance doesn't really impact that, because that's already in place to remove those kinds of operations.
It does, but I think it does impact in that it arms or it provides for PD in particular, because they're usually the leads on those kinds of things,
So
Animal
if
Cruelty
we
Task Force.
come upon a rooster that has the little attachment on his,
But now any property that has more than one rooster is in violation of the law, and that becomes an entree for the police to pursue further.
Great.
Right now, there's no limit to the number of roosters as long as the distance law is met.
Okay, but for the record, we've been joined by Councilmember Zine. Mr. Zine, you have any questions? No. I have a couple questions. Do you have any idea how many chickens might be in the city that would be changing the rules on? How many people have that?
I do not. We don't have any.
How many complaints do you get on chicken noise?
Several hundred a year
Several hundred a year.
of rooster crowing.
Yeah, rooster. Okay. And so how are you going to inform people of this new rule? If your new ordinance is you cite first time with a $50 fine?
Well, if there's, we'll put information on our website about the new law. And as far as providing some, we have no advertising budget or any other way of doing any kind of a massive outreach. But I think what will happen is as we get calls and complaints and our officers go out and maybe the distance requirement isn't a problem, but they have more than the one or two roosters, they may give warning notices to correct it first.
They may.
And help sort of share the knowledge, especially there's going to be areas where there's more likely to be roosters and chickens than other areas. Doesn't mean they can't be everywhere in the city, but there's going to be areas where they're more concentrated. So if they give some warnings the first few times, then that'll help share the information in
So
neighborhoods.
there's a warning process?
Yes,
All right.
there's a warning process. They would not
Discretion of
have
the-
to start with it. They could just give a warning
Okay,
and
so
say,
discretion of the officer, the citing officer.
particularly as the law becomes new, that'll be a good way to share
That was a
information.
concern I had, and what the police call a wobber, you can do it either way. You don't have to cite.
That's correct.
Okay, that's good. And finally, why is there such a different approach in how we deal with barking dogs, which is a very prolonged process? Very rarely is it achieved quickly and to everyone's satisfaction. And this is just, we're going to go out and cite you.
The barking dog process was developed quite a number of years ago through sort of a very long process. As a matter of fact, we're looking at the barking dog and the whole appeal process and everything about that hearing process right now to recommend to some improvements. One issue, one reason that it's very time consuming is because we have no staff. The staff to do all of the hearing program was cut. So we are using other positions to help cover that as best we can. So that creates a huge backlog. I think it's at least 6 months backlog now. So that's one reason for the delay. It's just purely a staffing reason. Another
And it could get worse
complication.
before it gets better.
Unfortunately, I think that's,
Unfortunately,
yes. Another reason is that the municipal code doesn't have clear criteria on what constitutes a barking nuisance. It has very general language that's sort of what's reasonably a nuisance to the person who hears it. Many other jurisdictions have some specificity. So many barking over so many minutes over so many days, or at least 2 neighbors have to complain, or some things like that. So we're looking at other jurisdictions and some of that to see if we could provide a little more structure. That helps, I think, make it clear for both the person who owns the dog as well as their neighbor, because what happens now is we have a lot of he said, she said, and since there's no black and white line that says, well, it barked more than 10 minutes or it barked less, for example, now it just becomes but it bothers me, but that kind of a thing. And I think that's what helps prolong the process and create more angst among neighbors. But we receive well over 2,000 complaints. And by far most of them, about 1,700 or 1,800 of them, do eventually get resolved through our internal process of our officers working with the 2 neighbors and trying to work things out. So it's a smaller number that are just so contentious that they end up working through the more formal process. And that's where I think some criteria and other things might help. So we are looking at trying to see if we can expedite.
All right, so you'll be bringing back some best practices?
Yes, we will.
Information. That's good.
Yes.
'Cause I think we need to go more in this line, what you've got here before us today, than what we've been doing for a long time. That you have to go out there, give them notice, say, cut this out, fix the problem, or we will come back and fine you. And that's what other cities do. And I think we need to get on that road rather than what we've been doing, which is years of haggling and nothing accomplished quite
Right.
often. So, Mr. Karnas.
A point of clarification, first violation $50, second violation $100. So if somebody has 100 roosters, and the first violation is still $50, or is it the number of roosters times $50 above one rooster?
It would be just by the violation, not by how badly you violated it. It leads up to a misdemeanor. And so if somebody isn't complying, it's not so much the money. For the real scofflaws, we would then be filing misdemeanor charges against them.
Okay, any other questions? All right, we have a number of public speakers on this, so if we could vacate your seats for a moment.
Thank you, council members.
Thank you. Call up Michael Mikil, and Phyllis Doherty.
Ready for me?
Morning.
Good morning. My name is Michael McKeel, 8630 Hillside Avenue in Los Angeles, and I represent TP2 LLC, which is a real estate development company. I'm speaking in support of this proposed ordinance. You may think this is a minor issue, but at the moment, my financial survival depends upon the passage of this ordinance. 9 months ago, I completed a subdivision of 28 single-family dwellings in Council District 7 in Panorama City. 6 of the houses back directly on an underdeveloped parcel, and there are 6 roosters on this parcel. If you think that roosters crowing in the early morning are a minor nuisance and a romantic reminder of our agricultural past, let me correct you. These roosters crow 24 hours a day, almost nonstop. In an attempt to quantify the noise, I recently documented the number and frequency of the crows in a typical 10-minute interval, and I documented one piercing crow every 10 seconds for 10 minutes, at which point I had to go to another room. I couldn't take it anymore. Because of the housing crash last fall, I was forced to rent these houses, and I'm now working on selling some of them. My tenants cannot sleep at night because of the noise. They resort to various strategies such as keeping the TV on, wearing earplugs, keeping fans on, or just not sleeping. I'm literally scared to death that they're going to move out when their leases are up towards the end of the one-year leases are up towards the end of the year. And I'm fearful about selling the houses because I need to disclose the presence of these roosters next door. This is a nightmare. I'm working day and night to keep my real estate afloat in this market, and I never in my wildest dreams thought that roosters would be my downfall. If I developed this property outside the city of Los Angeles, adjacent to farmland, I could understand and accept the problems resulting from building at the edge of the city. But this property is in the middle of the East San Fernando Valley, well-developed, and the center of Panorama City. Is that my time?
Go ahead and complete your
Oh, thank you.
thoughts.
And it's surrounded by single-family dwellings, condos, and apartment buildings. This is an urban site in 21st century Los Angeles, and the residents of my development and the future homeowners of my development should be able to sleep at night. Please approve this draft ordinance and make sure the City Council approves it as fast as possible. Thank you very much.
And Mr. Carnes has a question.
I have a question for you. Who was there first, the roosters or the units you built?
That's an interesting question. I think the roosters actually came somewhat later, but I'm not sure. I developed the first 14 houses of this development about 10 years ago, and I don't remember it being an issue then. To be fair, the second phase is closer to the underdeveloped property, but so I can't answer your question definitively, but I do know that in phase 1 it was not an issue, and it may be that the number of roosters increased significantly.
The property that has the roosters, is it RA property?
Typically in this area there are RA lots, which are then
I know the area very well.
The current general plan recommends RD 1.5, and that's what's being developed both south and north of
But that's
this
the
property.
general plan, but there are properties that are RA in that area.
There are, but there are very few left now.
Yeah. Well, that's the old question, chicken or the egg? What came first?
Chicken of the development.
I guess one of the things that a little striking is I can understand one rooster, perhaps, but to have 6 roosters seems a little odd. I don't understand why we need 6 roosters.
But if you have 6 residents, each of them could have a rooster, you'd have 6 roosters.
Well, in this case, there are 2 houses on the property.
So are they all on one? are they shared with the two properties?
There are 2 houses on this adjacent underdeveloped property.
Right.
It's one property, though, one
One
parcel.
property, 2 houses, several residents, I don't know.
According to the proposal, if they have one, they could have 2 more with a permit. So they could actually, if there were 2 separate residents, you could end up having the 6 roosters with permits. So,
Don't
it
tell
may
me
not
that.
be your solution, but
And you could rezone a piece of property and build more units.
good.
Well, that's
So
what will
every-
happen eventually.
Everybody works within the rules based on how the rules are written, right?
Yes.
And Mr. LaSalle, what is the permitting process? Is there an appeal to the permit? Or is it just an automatic over-the-counter permit?
Good question.
At the moment, the department has a real problem with an appeal process, and so we will be working with them to make sure that there's some kind of built-in due process. Again, their problem, as they mentioned, is lack of staff. And so we will be working out something so that we'll have something in
But
place.
you could do it like when planning has a permit appeal, there's a fee for the appeal process. So if someone wanted to appeal a permit being issued, they could do it, but have to pay the small amount that's needed for the,
Or we will simply find some way that they can free up some staff. Some of it may also be determined by the number of items that come up. The time period for someone to take out a permit for more than 1 rooster, up to 3, is only until the end of December. So what we are talking about really is a fairly short period of time, and it may simply not be an issue.
all right, thank you.
How many staff animal services have?
It would be Ms. Barth to tell you that.
Less today than last year.
Yeah, we have about 375 people right now.
And how many volunteers?
About 900.
900?
8 or 900, yes. Some of which mostly work special events, some of which work in the shelters regularly.
Well, I mean, I've heard this a number of times, lack of staff, and believe it. I understand a lot of people have lack of staff. Sometimes it's the deployment of the staff and how you put the resources out, or task force operations, police department, fire department, et cetera. But you've got 900 volunteers and 375 paid staff. Maybe some of the deployment needs to be changed in order to take care of some of these administrative situations. We had the same problem with DOT for a while, and they didn't deploy their personnel in order to handle administrative appeals. So some type of short-term solution, because if you're waiting, I think you said 6 months or something for a hearing, you may want to do some short-term modification, because you're not going to get any more people, and the problem's not going to get any better.
We have actually looked at having our shelter center managers spend a couple hours a week helping get caught up. So I
That
think
may
that's a
be
good
a-
idea. We'll keep looking at those kinds of options.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, sir. Appreciate it very much. Ms. Doherty?
Okay, Phyllis Doherty, the animal issues movement. To answer Councilwoman Councilwoman's question about the number of roosters. The way the law is now, and the common practice is that very often they're banded, their legs are banded, and they leave them on the property when there's an investigation for cockfight rather than to take them in. By creating this limit, now they will be taken in, which is good. We will be able to get them out of their hands. They will not be left there and become a nuisance or not be taken care of. This has been 2.5 years. I've been trying to get this ordinance through along with Bob Ferber. I thank you so much for finally getting it to this point. There's another issue, and right now it's particularly important, the health issue, in that even swine flu now has transferred and been found in turkeys, which means it's the same strain. It is not a mutated strain. There is a lot of health danger in having fowl in residential areas. Salmonella, Campylobacter, a lot of children die from salmonella, and we don't know what it is. It can be actually airborne. It can be transmitted airborne if you have a large number of fowl in one area. So we have a major crime issue that can be handled, a noise issue that is horrible for people, and a health issue all in one in this one ordinance. And on the number of animals that they keep as pets, remember that we do have the restrictions. They still have to be 100 feet from the closest residence and 35 feet from the residence of the individual. If it's very, very rare for someone to have pet roosters, because roosters fight with each other. Although fighting cocks are jungle fowl, they are not regular roosters. The combs and wattles make them look different. They are jungle fowl, but you cannot keep that many roosters as pets without them fighting. So when someone says they have that many pet roosters, they don't. They're involved in some kind of cockfighting operation.
Thank you, Ms. Doherty. Ellie Hamlin and Nancy Reynolds.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Thank you for allowing me to speak. My name is Nancy Reynolds, and I brought a couple things before I start speaking that I thought maybe you'd like to look at. It's kind of the other side of the coin from cockfighting. It's my daughter's 4-H book, and I marked all of the poultry projects she did for years that shows her advancement and what they did, and the poultry standard, which is how they judge poultry show birds, so if anybody's interested. I've lived in Sylmar for 30 years. Our lot is on R1AH. I do own poultry. I have never had one complaint in the 30 years I've lived there. And my roosters do not crow 24 hours a day. They do crow, but not 24 hours a day. And there's a lot of other noises that are in the city. That guy behind me runs a business, so I have to listen to his trucks and his equipment. Squawking parrot on one side, barking dog on the other. So there's a lot of other nuisances. Now, I show chickens. I raise them for that purpose only. I take care of the poultry. Before I got them, I researched and learned what to do to have the correct feed, the housing, having it clean, cool, warm, meds if needed, and I treat my chickens like pets. I show them, train them, I breed them for show. I also breed some for the 4-H children, which do poultry projects also, where they show at the fair and also at the poultry shows. There are thousands of people across the country that show chickens. It has nothing to do with cockfighting. They treat their birds well. And also the 4-H and FFA kids. My daughter was in 4-H for several years, and one of her projects was poultry. She learned the responsibility, feeding, cleaning, breeding, and training, and mentoring other kids. She entered fairs, poultry shows, and mentoring other children. What was nice about it was my daughter was too busy to hang out, get into drugs, boys, and any of that because she was busy taking care of her animals and entering fairs. Her 4-H leader, Marcia, has lived in Sylmar for 40 years and has never had a complaint about her poultry. She saw the difference in the kids after they graduated out of 4-H. They learned responsibility, working hard to achieve goals. They are college grads, firemen, Navy medics, and some own their own businesses. Where would we be without these programs for our kids? I know some of the concern are diseases with poultry. However, the last Newcastle outbreak that happened in the United States was caused by illegally transporting gamecocks across the border. That's how Newcastle got here. Bird flu is spread by migratory birds. So bird flu can break out anywhere, whether you have poultry or not.
Nancy?
Yes, sorry.
I have a question for you.
Yes?
You keep saying that you show chickens.
Uh-huh.
This ordinance has to do with roosters.
Well, I'm sorry, I have hens and roosters.
Okay.
And we breed them for show. They're not cockbirds or fighting birds, but we still have more than 3 roosters on our property, is why I'm saying that we, breed them and, I guess, over the limit.
So you would have in a regular year at any given time about how many chickens and about how many roosters?
I probably have about 30 hens and maybe 8 or 10, 12 roosters at a time, depending, on the hatch and if I give any to the 4-H kids or stuff, so we have a lot of them.
Okay. Thank you.
Do you sell any of them, or do you just?
Sometimes some of the other breeders or people that show will say, do you have a pair that I'd like to buy, and so they can start it.
Because the ordinance does allow it.
Pardon me?
The ordinance does allow more than the one if you're doing it for business purposes with a permit.
Right,
It'd be
well,
like breeder for dogs.
I really don't have a business that way, but it's not really business oriented.
It's a gray area, okay.
Yeah, it's showing, and it's so that people know it's almost like a dog show, believe it or
So
not.
It's a hobby.
Huh?
It's a hobby. More
Yes,
than
it's a hobby.
And
but
we'll
this
let
book
the city,
shows
all right,
how
we'll let the
you-
city attorney address that when you're finished up.
Oh, okay. Okay, I'll finish my thing. Okay, I said the bird flu is spread by migratory birds. Diseases can be carried by your shoes, trucks, cages, etc. So a lot of these diseases can come whether you have poultry or not, and just because you have poultry doesn't mean they're going to get it. Owning chickens does not automatically mean you contract or spread diseases. Some of the alternatives I thought that might be good to look at is make cockfighting a felony. Stiffer penalties for spectators, stiffer penalties for illegally transporting these birds, across border possession of fighting cocks and fighting tools and weapons. I have this thing here. It tells one of the maximum laws or whatever to show how some of them are stiffer than here. Oregon has, for cockfighting, it's a Class C felony, max 5 years, max $125,000, and it goes on 5 years, 125 for all of these different
The city of
items.
LA can't create felonies, so that's under state law. We
Okay.
can't do that. Wish we could.
Okay. The show people like myself and several other people don't agree with cockfighting, think it's barbaric. We turn them in if we know they're there, which we know what kind of birds they are and everything. And the thing is, if they ban this rooster thing, the cockfighters are going to go more underground. They're still going to do it, and they know how to get around it. So I don't know how much that would help. And I think if they limited people like us that have roosters and take them away, which will probably be destroyed, they would probably kill more roosters that way than by cockfighting.
Okay.
But
In conclusion.
the biggest thing is this will affect the 4-H kids, the FFA kids, and thousands of you as people that show poultry. I would hope that you could reconsider this ordinance, and maybe together we can come up with different ideas of how to solve this problem.
Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, ma'am?
Hi, my name is Ellie Hamblin. I've been raising Phantom Show chickens. Chickens is a blanket term. It includes males and females. Hens are females, roosters are males. I've been raising them for 15 years at 4 different locations in the city of Los Angeles. Never had a complaint. Multiple roosters. Depends on what time of year. Right now the babies are growing up, so I can have up to 30. And then, I do sell them. I'm a master breeder and exhibitor, so I sell them. As far as the cockfighting issue, I believe Nancy to be correct. The cockfighters, they're already breaking the law. They're not going to, at an ordinance, stop them from their activities. They're going to go further underground. The latest was the warehouse. They'll hide them in warehouses. They already are. So I don't know that it would slow them down. It probably would have more of an impact on the honest people that don't hide our roosters. That I know quite a few people. I know quite a few people that don't even show they have a few roosters, and it's not uncommon at all to have roosters as pets. If they're kept in an open area, they probably will get along fine. Caged, forced to be close together, and they need to be separated. It's not uncommon for pet roosters, as people think. This would affect the good people, I believe, not the bad people. And although I know you guys can't make it a felony, I do think that would be the answer as far as all the neighboring states have it, and we don't. And a lot of cockfighters come here because they're not going to get in as much trouble. Also in Arizona, there is an animal fighting reward program. The governor got together with the Humane Society, and tipsters, they're kept anonymous. Tipsters receive $5,000 for information leading to the arrest and conviction of cockfighters. Maybe that might be a better way to address that. Also, sorry, the buzzer made me nervous.
Conclude your thought.
As far as resources, I heard some resource concerns. I do believe you're going to spend a lot more resources counting roosters than you are addressing noise complaints. There's a lot more. I would say most people aren't getting noise complaints. So it's going to take a lot more counting them than to just address the ones that are actually problems. And as Nancy stated, roosters don't crow at night. Unless a raccoon or something's trying to get them, they don't crow 24/7. So I just asked for your reconsideration on the ordinance because it would changed my life for the negative.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Debbie Statlin and Dr. Clyde Williams. We can leave them with the clerk for a bit, and
I marked them both.
John, pass one down.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Debbie Statlin, and I want to talk to you about the rooster issue. I'm against the ordinance. I am not currently raising any roosters myself, but many of my friends are raising them for the purpose of showing and selling. I've been involved with the 4-H people before. I am a former dog show person. I brought one of my plaques from when one of my dogs won something in the dog show industry. It's the people that want to end tame animals, PETA, that is really making this problem for everybody. They want to take away our agricultural land. They want to take away our right to have tame animals and pets. They also want to take away our right to have agricultural land. They want to build apartment buildings. They want to build high-density property, and they want to overdevelop the city of Los Angeles. What we need to remember is that these are hobbies that people have had for many years. The city of Los Angeles is overtaxed in a lot of directions and financially bankrupt in a lot of directions. What we need to do is we need to relook at how the money is being spent and go after the real problems. What we have too many of in this city is not roosters, it's rats. We need to put our money into going after the rats in the city. My house is overrun at night with the rats in the trees and all the noise that they're causing and going through the garbage and making the disease from the rats get through the neighborhoods. That's what's making our children sick, not the roosters. Cockfighting is going to happen whether or not we have 3 roosters, 5 roosters, or 15 roosters. You will not be able to go to a county fair and see a natural animal. My granddaughter came to visit me, and she had never seen any kind of farm animals before because of the fact that there are so few agricultural areas left in L.A. I had to take her to farms and show her, this is a cow, this is the noise a cow makes, this is a horse, this is the noise a horse makes. One of these days, we're going to have to take our grandchildren to the library and rent video cassettes to teach our children what animals used to look like. This is not the way we want to raise our children. We need to have these things available to our children. I can no longer show dogs because the ordinance that was passed says you must spay or neuter your dogs by the age of 4 months. They cannot reproduce at the age of 4 months. You cannot tell if they are show quality by the age of 4 months. You people eliminated my possibility of having my hobby. You people have eliminated the possibility of us having pets. So now you're going to try and do it to the bird industry. Next it's going to be parrots. Next it's going to be fish. Next it's going to be children. You're going to say that children are too noisy, and you're going to limit 3 children to a household because there's not enough people to go around and take care of that. There's a point at which you over-limit people.
I have a question for the
Yes.
speaker, and she's gone over her time already anyway. You're saying that the ordinance that was passed in the city of Los Angeles, you're comparing this rooster ordinance to the one about spay and neutering dogs and cats?
Yes, I am.
Are you telling me that the ordinance did not allow for breeders to be able to continue to breed their animals? You're assuming that the ordinance said that as soon as they're 4 months, whether they're show quality or not, whether you want to breed them or not, you are not allowed to breed them anymore because they're going to be spayed or neutered absolutely without question?
No, what I'm saying is that I would have to pay exorbitant fees for every single puppy that was born because I couldn't tell if they were show quality or not in order to keep them beyond 4 months without spay or neutering.
And what's the fee?
At this point in time, it's $100 per puppy, and then it becomes $300 a dog if I want to breed.
Thank you.
So that basically puts it out of my financial realm to have my
You
hobby.
answered my question. Thank you.
Okay. Dr. Williams.
Dr. Clyde Williams, El Sereno, Northeast LA. I experienced 2 roosters. I wasn't going to speak this morning because I think you've spoken enough. However, from the LA Audubon, give us a call and we'll come and take care of the roosters. if they're making a noise, and if they are not tagged or otherwise identified. It's very simple. At about 2 a.m. in the morning, you go out and take them off the roosts, because they will usually roost. So if you know the habits of the birds, we can get rid of the birds. So give me a call. Thank you.
That's why you're the doctor. That's why you're the doctor.
The doctor has spoken.
No, I'm a doctor scientist, not an engineer, because I like birds.
Anything wrong with
But I also remember that this is a city of 4 million people. We have a lot of work to do, and we need a lot of houses. Thank you.
Thank you. Dove Lessel, please. If you could answer the questions that were brought up regarding exhibitors and the relationship FFA and 4-H, how would this impact those folks?
This would be exhibitors for dogs or exhibitors for roosters?
Roosters.
We'll stick to roosters.
Stick to roosters. Yeah, stay on track.
One of the speakers today said that part of her business was she was a breeder of roosters, etc. There is in the ordinance the ability, if you are a business and if you are breeding roosters, you can get a permit to do that, and then under subsection A, it says the section shall not prohibit any business, educational facility, or lawful animal exhibition from having or maintaining roosters as long as they have appropriate permits, operate in appropriate zoned areas, and maintain them as an integral and lawful part of such business or activity. And so if she is in fact breeding roosters, it seems that this ordinance would allow her to continue her business.
Is it possible for the city attorney's office and animal services, should this motion pass, to give an opportunity in various parts of the city to have forums to explain how the ordinance works, how it's going to be enforced, so that people can ask specific questions like that so that they can understand? And specifically, if the city attorney's office and animal services can do that, if they can make sure that they reach out certainly to the legitimate organizations like 4-H, et cetera, and Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts, et cetera, whoever it is might remotely be involved or interested in these kinds of educational activities, business activities, for showing, birds such as roosters and chickens, et cetera, so that you can maximize the outreach into those circles before the ordinance may have a detrimental effect on individuals that otherwise would be affected had they not, because they didn't know the details and understand how to navigate through them and still continue to do that legitimate activity?
I think that's primarily, again, a question for animal services. I would think that
Linda?
within the confines of their personnel,
I think that we can try what you suggested as sort of a public forum.
Yeah.
I think that probably an approach that we could take that would minimize the need for staff resource would be to see if we can get some mailing list from 4-H and so forth, and then maybe do a general public meeting and have the neighborhood councils help us promote it, and maybe aim at a Silmar or Shadow Hills, Lakeview Terrace, the areas where we know we have more of that kind of keeping, and then see what kind of a response we get from a meeting. And then depending on whether that seems useful or not, maybe try other areas of the city where we know we have more problems too. I know CD15's your area. All right. So I think that maybe the incremental approach, try to do some mailing and then have one meeting in an area which we know was vulnerable, and then sort of see what kind of a response we get.
So I just want to make sure I understand you correctly. You wouldn't limit it to those more intense likely areas, but you would make sure that you have more intensity of outreach for those particular areas,
Yeah,
right?
we would try to work at where we see the larger problem in order, again, to try to manage our scarce resources as best we could.
Okay, thank you.
And you brought up an interesting point, and this connects to that, and that is earlier you asked about the fees. And Mr. Kearns, if you'd want, we could work together on a motion that would allocate all fees from fines for this ordinance to educational purposes on animal keeping in general in the city, not just cocks but other animal keeping in general. It might be of value to the department, and that gives you then the resources to do some of this. So
Yeah, it would help us with, create publications and disseminate
Would you
more.
welcome that kind of motion?
Yes, we would welcome that
Yeah.
kind of
All right,
motion.
we'll work on that.
And we could also try to do a special phone number too, and maybe designate a couple officers, so that might be an easy way for people
Right.
to just real quickly get a question answered without having to go to a meeting to get it.
Okay.
Well, in the meantime, it can be put on the website.
Yeah.
We will,
Put it on the
absolutely.
website. And then finally, Mr. Lessel, would there be a way to, and Ms. Barth, while you're here, would there be a way to further define exhibitor to have an exemption for fees, permits for children under the age of 16 or so that are members of recognized animal keeping, showing organizations such as 4-H, FFA, so that I don't want to be charging 8-year-old little girl who wants to come in and have chickens in her backyard, but they should understand the responsibilities that go with it. So I wouldn't want to charge them to be members of FFA, really.
As far as getting a permit from us as an animal exhibition, for example, those fees right now are set to be completely cost recovery. So they're an average of what it costs to do the inspection and the paperwork and so on and so forth, and then with overhead assigned. I don't know right off the top of my head, it's maybe 100 or so and something. As far as an exhibition permit would go, if we wanted to provide a lower cost version, we would have to change the ordinance.
Okay.
Because
Is
it's
that in the
established
admin code or in the ordinance?
It's actually in the LAMC.
In the
Yeah, the specific permit. It kind of depends on what sort of a permitting they're getting, but if they end up getting an exhibition permit from us, those fees are set in the LMAC. But we could certainly, as part of the budget process, look at providing a discount opportunity if it were farm animal related, for example, and that could work our way through as we go through the
We'll add
budget
that.
process.
All right, any other questions? Is there any motions? Motion to approve? Okay, we have a motion to approve, and we'll add in there Mr. Cardenas's first request to report back within 6 days, and the other departments necessary to help you in this.
And you'll want that report back from us or from us working with CAO?
Yeah, you need to be the, yeah.
But also report back of all the parties within the city that need to be and should be engaged in that process. Within those 60 days, they need to be identified, and they need to come up to the table and say that they will be a part of that process.
Can we have assistance from the CAO to do that, to
Sure,
help us with?
absolutely.
Okay, rather than by ourselves.
The department and the CAO shall
Thank
report back.
What the CLA?
The CAO, get this, we got enough pain to spread around, we don't need to.
Let us know.
Right, and then also, I would add to that also that you report back to us a procedure in which we can amend the code, have your board come back with a fee waiver process for recognized youth organizations that exhibit and keep such animals, all right?
Will do.
All right, with that,
Matters.
complete, thank you. The time for public discussion is over, unfortunately, so no questions at this point. But this will be brought back to the council in 2 weeks?
1 week,
1 week.
the 22nd.
Okay, the 22nd, we'll be back in full council, and then there will not, downstairs in the council chambers on the 22nd at 10 a.m. All right, thank you very much. That is approved and sent forward. Item number, what was the other one?
2. Item 2, motion Weston Smith relative to the consideration of modifying the city charter to extend by 5 years the 10-year term limit for the chief of police.
Okay. Mr. Repovich.
I know that Chief Bratton's gone.
Yeah.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and Honorable Committee. Appreciate your time on this matter. I know you want to move it along, but I think it's an important opportunity for the committee to consider looking at the possibility that the chief of police position be an elected position. The rank and file membership believes that that's the way to go for the chief of police of Los Angeles, and that it would be great for you when you're doing forums out there on this matter to consider whether it should be a 10-year term or a 15-year term, that at the same time that you ask the public, would you like to vote on this particular person? It's an important position. It's a big enough one on its own, and we feel that strongly that the consideration for changing the charter to have that an elected position be considered. Thank you very much.
So you're saying that the LA Police Protective League has taken it up officially that they support to increase it to 15 years maximum for the chief of police and that it be an elected position?
No, not at all as far as 15 years. We just think that, no, we are not supporting any kind of increase in the number of years. What we're saying is, at this time, if you're looking to do something different with that position, that the real consideration should be making an actual elected position.
That wasn't the subject of the motion, but I appreciate the input. The subject of the motion was, should the chief's term be increased?
From 2 terms to 3?
Yeah.
Yeah, we're against that.
You're against that, okay.
I have a question.
Glad we got that out of you.
I have a question for Mr. Repovich. Do you know how it came about that we currently have the system for the selection of the chief of police? You know how that came about?
Well, I know that you sat on the Reform Charter Commission back when, but I don't know the details of how it... Are you talking about back when they changed the charter before?
It was a vote of the people that decided that the chief of police would be accountable through a different system other than the previous system where they were selected within the organization through the police commission, that the mayor would make a decision after the police commission accepted candidates. But there was a measure on the ballot called Measure F, which brought the current system of the chief of police. And we look at a little history. The first chief under that was Willie Williams for 5 years, and the second one's Bernard Parks for 5 years. And Mr. Bratton did his 5, and he got another 5, but he's staying 7. And now we're into the question, do we want to have 15 years instead of 10 years? But the voters under Darrell Gates' administration decided that the chief would be appointed through a political process. And some people say it's been politicized, and there's no question it's been politicized, but that was the vote of the people under Measure F.
I appreciate that, sir. I just think that transparency, especially in lieu of the consent decree in the new period that we're in, that the people be asked today if that would be something they'd like to consider.
Well, the problem is if the chief of police is elected by the people, and the chief of police is an elected individual, which used to be the case when the chief of police was appointed by the police commission, was accountable to the police commission, and that's why it was changed to the current process, that there'd be the elected officials, the mayor in particular, would be involved in that process. But what you're referring to under the election process, the chief of police would be totally independent from the council, from the mayor, and accountable simply to the people, such as the city attorney or the controller or any of us. We're accountable not to the mayor, we're accountable to the people. So it would revert basically back to the way it was, where the chief of police would be accountable to simply the people. And he may have a conflict with the elected officials, but it was changed so the chief of police would be accountable to elected officials, and that's the current situation. I don't know if enough years have passed to go back to the people to say we want to have another selection process. But no chief, since that's been implemented, has done the 10 years. None of them have reached that point. And then now we'll have another one come in and see how that works out.
And for the members of the committee, the maker of the motion has asked for a 1-month continuance anyway on this item, so if there's no objection, we'll continue 1 month.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much. Item number 6.
Item 6, City Control Report relative to trash fee revenue and is used for hiring more police officers.
Okay. And we have a request for a speaker from Dr. Clyde Williams. And Dr. Williams, our intent is to note and file this because I think the questions have been answered, but your input is welcome.
No roosters. Clyde Williams, El Sereno, Northeast LA. Accountability. Follow the money. There's no free lunch in LA. Therefore, what are we dealing with? As Highland Park Neighborhood Council indicated, this is much like a shell game. You put money into DWP, it gets transferred to somebody, then it gets transferred to the police department, but there's no accountability, no responsibility, and thereby who has the authority over this money trail? Can't track it. The controller can't track it. It seems quite strange. However, where does the money actually go? we know where it comes from, but if it doesn't pay for the sanitation, where does the money for the sanitation come from? It comes from the general fund. You can't have so many pockets without it eventually coming to the taxpayers. Again, this sounds like a tax being imposed to pay for a service which did not go through the normal requirements for taxes. So general fund compensation must be going to Bureau of Sanitation, because unless they have a net surplus revenue like DWP, they must be running in arrears because they're transferring their money to the police department. Seems very strange. So I would highly recommend that you either instruct the controller to come up with a system to really track the money, or you get rid of it, one way or the other. Thank you.
Thank you.
Excuse me.
Give it to sanitation. They need it.
It gets there, but it has a process to go through that legally we can't take a tax or a fee on trash and use it for any purpose but trash.
Yeah.
And so the $36 is based on the analysis done a couple years ago by the department on what it costs to pick up trash and what other cities charge around us. That money goes to the general fund and then is reallocated.
Yeah.
So there's a blending of the money that we legally have to keep a separation between the fire department.
Is that something like what they call money laundering?
No, it's called a legal separation that's required, that we cannot commingle our funds and then say it's for police. And the mayor did a great disservice by saying that. The money that's
that was
collected.
my point. Where did you get the impression that the trash fees were going to be used specifically to hire police officers?
That's what was publicly said. That was publicly said a number of times.
No, but wait a minute. Was it stated in writing? Was it stated verbally? Where did that come from?
Within the controller's report, there was a matter that they could not track it.
Okay, when you're done, I got a question for the controller.
And just again clear, we cannot take money from one tax or fee and put it for another purpose than what we state it's for. The trash collection fee was based on $36, which is the assumed collection cost of trash. And it goes in the general fund and goes back to the Department of Sanitation. For the mayor have said we can then hire more cops was a mistake, and it was wrong on his part to do that because that's not legal. So we keep that separation.
Because what they then said is that money, that 36 would pay for trash, would free up other money to pay for police.
Controller's office.
Yeah, we're just going to. Okay, we'll hold this going for the next meeting, then we'll roll this over for one more meeting and ask the controller to come back and discuss this.
We have a representative from the controller here.
Never mind. I don't have a question.
Is there a controller
Yeah,
representative?
somebody said that there's
Oh, fine, come on forward then. Never mind. John?
Okay.
I'll try to make it quick.
Rick Taguchi, Controller's Office.
Yes. How long you been with the controller's office?
5 years as of yesterday.
Okay, I asked that question because there's some dates on this that date back to '08, and we've had a few major changes in the controller's office since this report started. So there's a bit of consistency with your presence, correct?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. You worked on this report?
Yes, I did.
Well, excellent. Now, from your understanding, what was the impetus or the objective of this report?
Well, in a nutshell, the purpose was to determine how the increased trash fee collections were being used. And the problem we had was that there was no clear criteria, again, whether that money was supposed to be used only to hire 1,000 new officers or whether it was to be used for public safety in general. So that's the difficulty we had, was that there was no clear criteria. The money basically goes into the general fund, and it's spent on general fund purposes.
Okay. Now, the Department of Sanitation is pretty much the majority of their funding that they consume on an annual basis comes from the general fund, Department of Sanitation. I'm using generic terms, the majority of their funds. It's my understanding it does. The Department of Sanitation is generally funded by and large by the city's general fund. And also, the police department, by and large, is funded through the general fund, correct? Okay. But when it came to the increase in these fees, was there any official document that you found in your report that actually required that that money be used within the police department or specifically to hire more police officers?
No, the only thing we found was a motion made in April 2006, which said the city administrative officer work with the city attorney and report to the Budget and Finance Committee on the mechanisms that could be used to earmark the general fund savings generated through the increased trash collection fee so that they can be used solely and exclusively for public safety and for hiring 1,000 additional police officers.
So you found that that motion was actually introduced or made?
Yes, it was.
But
made, but we don't.
what was the status or the end result of that motion? Was it ratified by the council? Was it signed by the mayor? I mean, what happened to that motion?
The only thing we have, again, is in July 2006, the Budget and Finance Committee received and filed the motion stating, insomuch as the 2006-07 adopted budget includes a new financial policy on police hiring that affirms that the city's highest funding priority will be to provide sufficient resources and direct support of expanding the LAPD to the level of 10,000 officers by fiscal year 10-11. No further council action is required.
So that motion was actually received and filed. Is that another term for the motion was actually ratified by a majority of the council and became part of the city required activity, or?
No, the original motion, the 06 motion, never was acted upon.
But that's
So
my
it's
point.
expired.
It expired.
It expired.
So a lot of motions are made, a lot of campaign promises are made, a lot of verbal statements are made, or what have you. But as a controller, how do you report on those kinds of things? What I'm getting at is when those kinds of noises are made, for my purposes, I'll just say when those kinds of noises are made, those are not the kinds of noise or activity that actually requires a follow-through as a result of policy by the City of Los Angeles, correct?
Yes, again, the controller...
Like a received and filed motion is what I'm getting at, right? You reference this received and filed motion, and I agree with you that you're accurate in the statement that you just read. It is accurate. But what I'm saying is the fact that you've pointed out in the report that it was received and filed, doesn't it mean that if it was an idea or even it made it to the form of a motion, the fact that it was not ratified means that that point is now moot? It is not a required follow-through activity by the council or the mayor or anybody, correct?
Yes, I believe that's correct. Again, the controller in her cover letter indicated that from a legal standpoint, it appears that the money was used appropriately.
Yeah, see?
But again, that's might not be consistent with what other people were led to believe.
But see, that's the important part. When you talk about, I apologize, I thought this was going to be quicker, Mr. Chairman, but you mentioned that what people were led to believe. I am not aware. I'll use another elected official, for example, so people don't get around this city hall, get a little too perturbed that they think that somebody might be picking on them. We have a governor, for example, that got elected by using terms like, I'm going to blow up boxes, who actually said, I'm not going to use the financing ideals or schemes that were mentioned by the governor that I would like you to vote out of office and then put me in office. Subsequently, those things did occur. A governor of the state of California got voted out of office, recalled, and then a new governor was put in place. A lot of things were said. A lot of promises were made. But technically speaking, everything that was said on that campaign trail, and even subsequent to that new governor getting elected, whatever that governor verbally claimed, actually is not a requirement or anything that can be held in court or anything that could be held by the state controller's office or anybody. Nobody can hold that governor legally accountable for those statements. You get what I'm saying?
Yes, we understand.
For a follow-through. So my point is, your report stating clear enough that not only has the money for the increased fees have been used appropriately as far as you can tell so far, why wouldn't the report actually state unequivocally that there was no obligation, legal or otherwise, for those monies to be used within the police department and or to hire more police officers? Why didn't the report go far enough to actually clarify that? Because to this day, people are still misled because nobody has stated clearly within the city, whether at the controller's office or a new motion by the council or the mayor saying, oh, what I meant was, or let me clarify in writing what my intent was or is heretofore forward. Your report was the closest we were supposed to get to finally putting this issue to bed and to put it into a proper place of understanding what the obligations are for those monies.
Yeah, I can't respond to that. That's something that would have to be taken up with the controller.
Well, I appreciate your frankness, because the thing is, that's one of the problems with reports from controllers. If it's an official audit, and you're aware of audits, right? Probably 1,000 times more than I am. But my rudimentary understanding of audits are there are specific guidelines and requirements in order for them to follow through and to be able to be called an audit, right? And it's my understanding that this is a report.
Yes.
I'll consider whether or not I'm going to ask the current controller's office to do an audit of those funds. And then once we do that, then we can actually get delineated specific clarity. I already know what the answer is. The answer is whether a mayor or a council member or what have you, or a motion was made to say, let's use X monies for this purpose. The fact that there was no follow-through of completeness of requiring of those monies to be used in a certain way, whether legal or otherwise. The bottom line is, there's nothing wrong with the way the city's using that money. It's going into the general fund. The sanitation department is being funded. The police department's being funded. And, well, technically speaking, we all move on.
I've got to add something. There's a thing called transparency. There's a thing called honesty in government. And when the governor made comments that he wasn't going to increase the vehicle registration fee, which he's done, and he wasn't going to increase other taxes, which he did. And he wasn't going to borrow billions of dollars, which he did. So I don't want to say he deceived the public. Let's just say the wool was pulled over their eyes. And along the lines with what this situation is, I clearly recall the public statements made that this would give us the funds for additional police officers up to 1,000. But if you examined it in some depth, it would put money in the general fund, and that money would then take care of taking the sanitation fee would be covered. We'd have additional funds that we could use for police officers. If every single dollar that sanitation fee came in was for police, I don't know if that's ever been accomplished or not. But I don't want to say the public was deceived, but I'd say it's a technical issue that we said one thing publicly, then the technical issue is something else. The bottom line is we reached 10,000 police officers, and it comes to the general fund. So they put the money in a pot. If they say we're going to buy new trash trucks to increase the sanitation fee, I don't think people would have bought it. But in this particular case, it was on public safety. So I can understand the back and forth, but the governor clearly lied to the public, and we want to make sure that we don't lie to the public, that we're honest and we have integrity with what we say, with what we do. I need to go on record for that.
Glad you did, and for the record, as the Vice Chairman of the Budget and Finance Committee, it was made very clear by your new boss, Ms. Gruhl, and I in that committee that the money was never intended for hiring cops. In fact, there was a motion she introduced that's not mentioned in here, clarifying the language, that this is to pay for the cost of collection of trash, which the city of LA did never charge for, but every other city in the county does. And so we were going to do what every other city does, charge for trash collection, which then would have freed up money in the budget to be used for other purposes, which the mayor decided he wanted to use for police hiring. So you never mention in here in your report, one, the Gruhl motion, but also you never looked at the cost of trash collection and the amount of money that was generated toward that purpose. And that's where the report is failing. The money was collected for trash collection services, which every other city but LA used to charge for. And that's the money there went to that first. and only, so. We're still going to receive a file this.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Okay. Sorry. Last two speakers, Phyllis Doherty and Shelley Lubin.
I'm going to speak for Phyllis Doherty. I'm going to speak very, very briefly. This last weekend was the 7th Preventing Abuse Conference was held in regard to human trafficking, pornography industry, and child pornography. I am on the LAPD Human Trafficking Task Force, thanks to Councilman Cardenas. Shelley was a presenter there, and I would really like to give my time to her because she has a very important issue in the Los Angeles area to present to you. And we would just want to thank you. You're all caring, and I know this will mean a lot to you.
Good morning. Thank you for bearing with me. This is not easy for me to do, but it's very important. My name is Shelley Lubin, and I am the Executive Director of Pink Cross Foundation, and I am extremely concerned about the rampant sexual transmitted diseases, HIV, and illegal and unsafe work conditions in the porn industry. Not only am I a concerned citizen, I am a former porn actress and a survivor of the porn industry, where I contracted genital herpes, a non-curable disease, HPV, and I developed early cervical cancer, had half of my cervix removed. I've lost 3 children due to miscarriage and 1 due to ectopic pregnancy. I hemorrhaged for 12 years. I've had severe anemia, and last year I had a uterus obliteration. I have been out of the industry for 15 years, and praise God, I did have a strong recovery. I had a great man stand by me and a lot of hard work. Anyways, this has motivated me to go back to the industry and reach out to these men and women, particularly women, as 75% of porn performers are women who suffer from sexually transmitted diseases and the secondary effects of them the most because of the way our reproductive systems are made. So anyways, they're blatant about all the STDs. Even the adult industry, medical clinic founder Sharon Mitchell, who's also a former porn actress, who takes care of the porn actors and porn actresses, says that 66% have herpes, and yet they don't test for herpes, HPV, hepatitis B, C, A, and it's rampant. I know because I've talked to hundreds of people. I'm also an ordained chaplain to the porn industry. And so I'm extremely concerned about this. We've talked to Cal Ocean, made formal complaints. LA Public Health is now investigating 16 unpublicized HIV cases reported by AIM, Adult Industry Medical Clinic. Just in June, someone caught HIV, and they would not, AIM refuses to cooperate with LA Public Health and Cal OSHA. So that's why we're speaking out now, because there are people getting destroyed every single day. Not only that, women are especially, they're trafficked. It is human trafficking. We are forced, coerced, lured in, threatened that if we don't perform certain sex acts, we will be blacklisted, we will be hurt. That's why hardly anyone is speaking out. Obviously, I had to have a really strong recovery for me to sit up here and speak to you this way. Right now, we have helped over 40 women and men leave the industry, which has been, wonderful for me and very meaningful. And then these women have been brave to submit statements to the state of California talking about the illegal and unsafe work conditions that go on daily and blatantly in the porn industry. In fact, the adult film industry workers blatantly admit all of this online. I have hundreds of statements, quotes, of not only former porn actresses, but current ones. See, no one's been monitoring them, but I've been watching them for 5 years, and now I'm coming out publicly and sharing my research, as well as I have statements. This is what I'm requesting humbly from you, is if you would please give us a special hearing where we could present this evidence that we have to you, and I could bring some of the women to share and tell the truth. I've been doing this a couple of times at State Capitol. I'm not a professional activist, although I'm probably the only voice speaking out right now. And the porn industry does not refute me. They can't. That's how I have irrefutable evidence that the city needs to see. As far as, from my understanding, you're in charge of Chatsworth, California, public safety. And that's why I'm here today. I'm asking you wholeheartedly to please give me a special hearing and allow me to share. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for coming. That was it took a lot of guts. Mr. Carnes, you're kind of the expert on human trafficking in the state, actually. Was there much going on in the legislature? I mean, did they say they were going to do anything?
Well, legislature, what they want to do is tax it, which I'm not crazy about that, obviously, but you know what? Some of those funds were going to go to helping these people, and I'm a humanitarian. And then obviously there's legislation for condoms. My problem with that is it's not practical to use condoms on a movie that takes 8 hours to make with 6 to 75 performers. One of the girls we helped, she showed up to the set. They told her there'd be 15 male performers, and there was 75 men from civilians, not male talent, because in LA Weekly, they advertised to men saying, come and have fantasy sex with your favorite porn star. And so she was forced to do that scene, and there's no way she could have used condoms for that. That would have been impossible. So I'm not a fan of the condom legislation. I'm a fan of somebody who needs to crack down on this industry, because they're making billions of dollars, and they also suck out state services. These women, where do you think they go when they have a drug overdose, alcohol overdose, which is also very rampant? And they admit this all online.
What we have is a legitimate industry. The porn industry is a legitimate industry.
Yes, I know.
A legal industry.
It's a legal industry.
It is. It's legal operating. I know that, but they're illegally operating as a legal industry.
And the women and the men who are participants, are they voluntarily getting paid for that?
Most of them, 90%, are on drugs and alcohol, and they admit it.
I understand that, but they're getting paid, and they're willing. They're not being held against their will.
Yes, some of them are being held against their will, yes.
Okay, if they're held against their will, then that's a crime. I'm trying to figure out what we can do in legislation for the people who are there legally.
I have a couple ideas. I feel they should raise the age to 21 for sure.
What's the age now?
18.
Okay.
I feel that they should definitely have licenses, and they should be orientated about what could happen to them, just like a food handler. I was a food handler and had to learn how to handle food. How much more bodily fluids? By the way, exchange of bodily fluids is illegal in the state of California to Cal OSHA, bloodborne pathogens, and yet they break the law every single day.
So you're talking about letting it continue, but just have some tightness and some guidelines.
I don't believe it continue without having illegal activity because of the rampant prostitution, and I know this industry, it's cutthroat, and everything is based on illegally operating. They operate illegally in a legal sense. Do you know what I'm saying? They can't, if you took away the prostitution and you took away, you put condoms on them, and, you'd have to take away everything from them. They wouldn't make any money. They've even admitted, we were not hustlers. Larry Flynn even said people don't want to see condoms. It's not going to work. They don't care about the workers. They care about the profit.
If you could get some recommendations to my office, we'll talk to you about that.
I just want to add one quick thing. She reminded me, in 49 states, the production of pornography is illegal. This is the only state that it's legal to produce pornography, and that's only by case law. So I just want to let you know.
How has it been stopped legally in other states?
You know what I've realized is they don't have anyone or any proof of the nexus between SOBs, sexually oriented businesses or the adult film industry, and secondary negative effects on the workers. I'm probably the first person who's really ever testified publicly against the porn industry, and so that's been the problem. But now I have the witnesses, and I also have their very words that they even blatantly admit. So I've got a lot of proof.
I'm just wondering how a state can write a law to prohibit something that the Supreme Court has said is legal.
Excuse me?
How can a state write a law? You're saying 49 states make it illegal. How have those states written a law that allows something that the United States Supreme Court has said is legal under the First Amendment?
It's pandering in 49 states. It's only from the court in California. It's Freeman versus the people, and it's Freeman versus, the state of California. It's by case law. It's just a pornographer who they said, hey, you can't do that. And he said, well, this isn't prostitution, it's a camera. That's why it's legal here. There's really been no legislation that's just said, hey, porn is legal.
Okay, we'll check that with the city attorney. My understanding is there's a federal Supreme Court ruling.
And state law in California is silent on it. So therefore, they just revert to case law.
Yes, it's
And
case law.
has determined that it shall remain legal.
I don't believe that. I have to research that myself. That's a great question, but I do not believe from all my, mentorship, and I've gone to D.C. and learning. I don't believe that is actually legal with the Supreme Court.
Mr. Chairman,
I'm talking about the production of pornography, by the way.
That's what I'm talking about.
what we can do at the city level is we can determine what the nexus is when it comes to enforcement within our jurisdiction, our geographic area. And does police enforce it? Who enforces it? Whatever motion that may pass the council. We could also write and support a resolution asking the state legislature to take on certain legislation and describe that legislation, and hopefully they would listen to us. They don't always listen to us. Well, they seldom listen to us. But
You used to be there, didn't you?
yeah, I didn't listen either. But I know better. Now I would listen. But the thing is, basically when the chairman asked you to get him some information, I told him that I'll be more than happy to work with him on whatever that we can do at the city level to try to help improve the situation. But at the same time, I just don't want to mislead you, because it really sounds like something that needs to take precedent at the state level. But I'm sure there are some things that we could possibly do at the local level when it comes to enforcement, because we do have certain enforcement authority when it comes to businesses and or property.
I just need a point of
Such as real estate property. I'm not saying that the workers are property. I'm talking about the real estate.
I need a point of clarification. Are you trying to outlaw and ban the production and distribution?
My main focus is to protect those women and men's lives.
But let the product continue. Let the production continue.
If they can do it legally and they can have the same work conditions as other industries, then I'm going to leave them alone.
Okay, so they would still continue to perform sex acts. It would just be with some different guidelines. In other words, you're not trying to outlaw and ban. You're just trying to give some restrictions, some guidelines.
I'll be honest, I don't
protect their
believe
health.
that they can continue illegal in a legal sense, because it's that illegal. I was in that industry 2 years and 8 years total for the sex industry in California.
So you're trying to ban the...
If they could operate legally like every other work industry or workplace in California, I will leave them alone. But I don't believe that they can do that because I know this industry.
Yeah, sure. I got it. Ms. Berry?
Just a quick question. Is there any organized effort to unionize workers?
Yes, they try, but Nina Hartley just told me not too long ago that it's impossible because they're so disorganized. And you have to understand, there's so much division in the porn industry because it's a cutthroat business.
Have you reached out to any existing union organizations to assist you, or maybe people who think like you, to come in and help?
I have reached out to people like Concerned Women for America in D.C. I've reached out to AIDS Healthcare. AIDS Healthcare was very helpful in assisting me in talking.
Union organizations that already exist.
Within the porn industry?
No.
Oh, no. I have not. I'm still learning how to do this. Yeah, I have not done that, but I'll look into that.
It's a way
We'll sit down and offer you some options, just so you know our city has very little control over these issues. We might go through county health.
Do you know who does? Because I've been to
County health department has a lot. Cal OSHA, obviously. We are a subscriber to county health, and so we can have some input to them. We don't run our own health department, but we can look at those aspects. So anyway, thank you very much. Bring some information, as we'll see what we can do.
I appreciate that. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. I'll introduce her to Julie Butcher.
Julie Butcher, right. Thank you very much. And other items on the agenda that concludes our meeting. Thank you very much.
It's an analogy. It's a good analogy.
Okay.
Kind of hard to get by. Yeah, well, I never know what these are.
Bye-bye.
Okay.